Well, hello there. It is your girl, Just Lovely, and I am coming in today with a review of Father's Day, a Kirk Franklin story. And you can actually find this documentary here on YouTube at Kirk Franklin's channel. Have I ever been interested in Kirk Franklin? Not that much. But I could tell you this. His music has made me get up and praise the Lord. I could tell you that. But the Father's Day documentary is based on this year. It goes through him in the studio with the self-titled albums Father's Day, which should be coming out soon, I assume. And we're following him throughout the early parts of 2023. This was a hard one. Thank you, Leo the Lioness Queen. I never knew that an Aries could be so damn emotional. Oh no, lately I have been quite emotional. I could blame it on a few things, but I'd rather not. I'd rather not today. But while I was watching this documentary, I just found myself crying in tears. And it just made me realize that I was a person who collected broken people. And throughout the years where I say, oh, I'm hard, I'm tough, I realized that empathy is really real. I have an empathetic heart for people that feel misplaced. I have met twins that were, I probably was like maybe 7 years older than them, but they were twins and they lost their mother at an early age. And they both stayed in trouble. And I always had my house open for them because they ran away from the foster system. They stayed in juvenile and jail. And I understood where they were coming from based on the circumstances of how they ended up in the system. I kind of felt like that was the reason why they acted the way that they act. But you couldn't have never ever told me that Kirk Franklin grew up in the same manner. Different because Deborah is still around and he was adopted by his distant aunt, cousin, relative. And it made me realize that I've, along my life path, has collected people. Anytime I met anyone that I felt like needed a hug, someone to love on them and be their sister and be there for them, I've always jumped in to do that. And then they'll do some despicable thing to me and I lose interest. Just like that. I would lose interest. And it will be a forget them. I don't have to deal with this. And they can go away and stay away for the rest of my life. I'm trying to help you. You need my help. But I realized this year, honestly, I realized that I have my own issues that I need to overcome. And me trying to help people in my past that I've collected along the way, I wasn't doing them no good. Hell, I'm a broken person just like them, in a sense. Sometimes I feel like I got everything together. Sometimes I feel like the life path that I've chosen for myself, I've done pretty well. Sometimes I feel that way. And sometimes I feel like I can try a little harder and then I can see things differently and I can have a better life for myself. I do. Sometimes I feel that way. So I realized that no, the things that I feel that I got where I become a broken person did not happen with childhood. I feel like my childhood was perfect. I do. Anything that I asked for, as long as I was bringing home A's and B's, I was able to do things that a lot of my friends that I went to school with was unable to actually do. And I have a relationship with my mother and my father. Although they divorced when I turned 15, but I've always had a relationship with my mother and my father. I knew exactly who I was and where I came from. And anytime I needed to talk to anybody, it would always be those two people. I could always lean on them. I think where the tragedy in my life happened was in 2004, where my mother announced to me that she had breast cancer in March of 2004. And she moved back to Atlanta from Ketchikan, Alaska. Yes, Ketchikan, Alaska. She moved back to Atlanta to go to Winship Cancer Institute. And not only did I learn that the cancer in my mother's body was out of control and had spread to her bones, I started feeling like the chemotherapy was just a ruse and that we needed to find other means, but it was already too late. And I lost my mother December 2004. My mother turned 50 in March of 2004. So at this time, guys, I'm 49 years old. And I have a fear of 50. I do. I have a fear of 50. My fear is that I am going to lose my life in 2024. Actually, 2024 will be 20 years of me without my mother. Last year, I lost my father. So it's been very hard since October of last year up until now. Because now I feel like I'm an orphan. I don't have any parents. I don't. But let me just get, I'm all off track. Here I am making it about me, huh? Yeah, I always do that. Because I'm the only person that knows me. And I have no problem with sharing me with others. So there you have it. And okay, so Father's Day. It's a lot of things in Father's Day that like I said, made me realize that I have become an emotional mess. The whole time that I watched this documentary, I was in tears. I was crying. I was crying. First of all, I did not know that Kirk Franklin was actually 53 years old. I always thought that Kirk, we right around, well, I ain't that far off. But I never knew that he was as old as he was. Another thing I learned about Kirk Franklin was that he actually have children and a wife. Don't ask me why, but I always thought that Kirk was, But I never knew that Kirk suffered from the childhood trauma that he suffered from. And the things that he was saying was familiar to me because I had two friends that I would speak to on a regular basis and say, you need to be honest with your child. You need to let your child know that the man that you've pinned your child on is not their actual father. And the more you live in this delusion, the more you're hurting your son. And both these people that I'm speaking about had sons. So when Kirk Franklin explained that he had buried a man he hated for years, it stuck out to me. It stuck out to me. And the reason it stuck out to me is because if it could have went another way, it could have went a way where the man that died and left behind a child who they really didn't have a relationship with, because for whatever reason, they in their heart did not believe that the child was theirs, and neither of the adults in the situation took the time out to do the DNA before the man actually passed away. So all this time, Kirk has been hating this man who probably didn't think that Kirk was his child. He probably had Kirk as a denial his whole life while Kirk has been here. We got to remember, Gertrude adopted Kirk at the age of 4, and Kirk was born to teen parents. That's something I never wanted to be either. I always knew that parenthood probably wasn't for me. I didn't want to be a parent simply because I don't even sometimes want to be responsible for my own life, yet alone another. And as selfish as that sounds, I think that's the best course of action for myself. And especially when I was a teenager and people around me were my age and they were becoming pregnant, I was just looking at these bitches shaking my head like, girl, what the fuck you doing? And that's when I realized that that's not for me. I don't want nobody to deny my child. And then I could see why the people denying the child. Why don't you just be honest and do some DNA and find out who the hell your damn child father is? Because if it's nothing that I believe in family and I believe in knowing where you belong. And I just hate the denial of a child that is innocent and has nothing to do with any of this. And some kind of way they end up, if not, they didn't end up in the system as far as child protective services or adoption. They end up in the system as prisoner number this, and this. And I think that them not having an actual relationship with a man and only being raised by a single mother has a lot to do with it. Now listen, don't get me wrong. There's some single mothers out there that do the right thing. I made this video earlier and I felt like I left some stuff out, but in that earlier video, I said that, teen parenthood can go one or two ways. It could be a disaster to where the child is left feeling like they are abandoned by the father, and this is single motherhood, by the way. Like they feel like they're being abandoned by the father. Or it could go a totally opposite direction where the single mother actually grows the fuck up and be a respectable parent and raise their children up in a manner in which they wish they did. That wasn't the case for the both situations that I know of. And they showed me that I didn't want to be a parent. Honestly, I didn't. But back to Kirk. Kirk, he explained to us that he went and buried this man, and that the only thing he had was Gertrude. Gertrude, they would go to church, come home. Kirk said he didn't have birthday parties, cakes with the candles to blow out, or anything. He said he was always teased at school. He didn't have anybody. He didn't grow up with siblings or cousins. He was alone. And he formed a relationship with God with the piano in the front of the house and by laying on the roof of the house, looking into the stars at night and talking to God. Kirk, that's a good friend to have, God. Kirk said that he didn't grow up with any siblings. I've wondered throughout this whole documentary whether or not Deborah had any other children outside of Kirk. It's one thing to have a child as a teen, and when you become an adult, you find the right guy and y'all have some children. But the one child that was adopted away he have no relationship with the siblings. And I know that will probably stab deep too. Kirk explained that he understands that there's a lot of children within the system, and a lot of children are adopted out to other people. But because he was adopted to a distant relative, at times he might see Deborah. And he explained the difference. He said that, some children are adopted out and they don't have a clue of who their biological people are. So basically, over time, they're healing the wound. They know that they've been abandoned, but they're being able to heal the wound over time because they're not in a situation where they could possibly see the birth parent. And he explained to us that at least 3 times out of a year, he could see Deborah. But his wounds was never able to actually heal because every time she would drive away, he would wonder why she wouldn't take him with her. And that scalp on that wound would be snatched off. Now that's deep. That's deep. I need to go find out if Deborah had any more children. Also, we find out that another one of his family members passed away. And one of the people that is within his group that they're working on this album, Father's Day, on March the 1st, 2023. They're in the studio, and he points out one of the young ladies that sings with him. And he says that she went to a family members of his funeral, and there was a man there by the name of Rick. And people were at the funeral saying, gosh, he looked like Kirk. Oh, I wonder if that's Kirk's dad. And they were gossiping, just gossiping. To the point where Rick said, I'm going to go and do a DNA test, and I'm going to ask Kirk to do a DNA test, and we need to figure this out because I did used to date Deborah. And the man went and did the DNA test. Kirk went and did his DNA test, and his doctor called him, and she told Kirk that 99.99999% Mr. Rick is your daddy. And when the doctor was telling Kurt this, Kurt walked away from that phone, baby. Kurt was pacing back and forth. He was stuck. He was stuck. And I realized at this time that every time in this documentary, whenever Kurt was faced with adversity and it was something tough for Kurt, he had to be alone. And this has been his condition since child. He been alone. So he had to get by himself and he had to, register what he just heard. And the doctor was on the phone saying, "Oh, are you there? Are you there?" And his wife is standing nearby and she's like, "Yes, he's trying to register this." And I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, oh my God, what? Ooh. I could not imagine, and I can't. I can't imagine. I cannot. And I watched this morning and I was stuck. I was glued. I was all in. And I was sitting in my bed watching this on my YouTube and I was crying my eyes out. For one, I didn't even know Kurt was married. Honestly, guys, I've never paid attention to Kurt Franklin. Like I said in the beginning, his music it touches you. It makes you feel good inside. But that's it. I just never really paid any attention to Kurt Franklin. I always made up these little jokes saying that Kurt Franklin, that's Plies' daddy. Because him and Plies look just alike to me. Oh, wow. So Kurt ended up calling his Aunt Sandra. And Kirk is on the phone and he's like, "Hey, Sandra, is it any way you could make an arrangement so we can meet up with Deborah?" And she like, "Who? Who you want to speak to? Who you talking to?" And I'm looking like, what is going on here? And he said, "Oh, Aunt Sandra. Okay, that's better." And I'm like, what? Aunt Sandra? And the same thing I was thinking Kurt Franklin said on the screen. He said, "See, this is the issue that I have with these people. These people want to treat me like I'm 10 years old. I'm 53 years old. Anytime I talk to these people, they put me in a place to where I was 10. And I'm an adult these days. Why are you treating me like I'm a 10-year-old? And I said to myself, especially when I was raised by Gertrude, like, girl, get a grip. They pull up to Sandra's house, child, and she had him, well, first of all, the bodyguard get out and tell Sandra she got to fill out this paperwork. And she said, I'm not filling this out till we get inside. I guess you got to do what they want you to do, Kurt, because you're trying to get a resolution to this issue, right? So they go inside, and Kurt showed them the paperwork about the 99.99999% that Rick is the daddy. But the mama say, I ain't going for that. I ain't going for that. That ain't right. That ain't true. And I'm saying to myself, like, I thought DNA was, that was honest work. They done took samples of these people's DNA, and this is how we find out whether or not you are not the father or, shit, we could have been on Maury. Paternity court. Something. And she just wasn't going. She was like, I ain't going. That ain't right. That ain't true. So he arranged for them to do it again. They did it again. Now this time, Rick, Deborah, and Kirk, they all meet up, and you guess who? Sandra was there too, child. And at the end of the day, when the results come back, 99.9999999%. And Deborah still said no. The only thing this man wants you to do is be honest, Deborah. Let him know that you did have something going on with Rick. But you're denying it. You're saying like you never had any relations with Rick. And I don't do DNA lie, y'all. Is Kurt being bamboozled again? I think that Kirk has an accurate feeling that this is his father. The paperwork is right there in your face, and you still have an issue with being honest with Kirk. And that to me made me feel sad. I wanted to reach out and give Kirk a big old hug and a kiss and tell him that everything gonna be all right. And honestly, at the time, I was saying to myself, you need to leave her alone. She ain't for you. Shit. She ain't for you. Because she can't even be honest with herself. She need to have a come to Jesus moment with the Lord above. And be honest within herself. For the life of me, I don't understand why people just don't want to just do right by other people. I know a lot of times people look at celebrities as if they are these untouchables. And I think that before social media, I was more so addicted to the aspect of celebritydom or stardom. I would pay more attention to celebrities at that time. But because these celebrities today are so much in our face, I think that's the disconnect with me and celebrities. Honestly, when friends send me little stories on celebrities, I don't care nothing about that. I don't. Because I see it on the internet every day. They put their lives in front of the camera just as well as me. So it's not a big deal to me. But this really touched my soul. I could say that. Another thing was that even though Deborah wouldn't be honest about the situation, or, at least give Kirk what he felt he needed from her, I realized that when you're a person like Kirk and you grew up in the situation that he did, more than likely you're going to have issues with developing relationship with other people. Throughout the beginning of this documentary, I felt like Kirk Franklin, because he did talk about having to go to child support, and he was a father. So in a sense, in my mind, based on his stardom and the music that he put out, I felt like, and the abandonment issues, I felt like Kirk Franklin probably was the A1 parent in the universe. I felt like Kurt was the best parent to his children that anybody could be. But at the end of the documentary, I found out that Kurt hadn't talked to his son in 2 years. So he had to have a meeting with his son. And his son is a giant, by the way. And Kurt gave the son the paperwork. And the son cried and said that this is all he ever wanted. He wanted to have a relationship with his father and his father's father. And it touched my soul when the son actually, Kurt was like, just come on, come and give me some love. Come and give me some love. And so both of them hugged one another, and Kurt touched his son's face in a loving manner. And he said that the only thing that he want to do is build a relationship with his son better than what they have now. And so he can always be able to touch his face in that manner. And that had me crying too, y'all. Like, oh, God. Kirk Franklin, you got me out here crying. Y'all, my dumb ass commented on the video and said, thank you for sharing your story. I just wanted to give you a hug and a kiss. Because I did. And then after I watched this documentary, y'all, I was thinking to myself, like, damn, you yourself, girl, you got some issues too that you need to work out. And the reason why every person that you call yourself trying to fix that was hurt, and you couldn't understand their story, but you knew that was the reason they acted in the manner that they did. Either they pushed away from you because you was trying too hard with them, or you pushed away from them because they actually showed you their true ass. And I realized today that broken people can't fix broken people. And y'all, look. Go look at this damn documentary that Kirk Franklin put on. I'm going to drop it in the description bar below. Get your tissues ready, too. And it's a shame that people do these things to children. I think that everybody should know where they come from, where they belong. They should know their actual people. And I ran into this too many times within my lifetime, where these people lie and say that this the daddy. And I guess that goes back to that old adage, mama, baby, daddy, maybe. But it destroys people. This is a grown 53-year-old man. And he has just found out this year who his actual father is. And Kurt, he told him, my heart is open, my doors is open to you. That's something. That is something. This has been your host, Just Lovely. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I thank you all for listening. I want you all to have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.